Berlin was so far on the flight plane, the flight distance for the bombers, that they carried more of the incendiaries to burn, which left the wall standing. And that's why you see so many walls standing, but the structures burned. Because in the early days of bombing Berlin, they used more firebombs than they did high explosive. And this is right downtown Berlin. I'm impressed with this picture. This was the Tiergarten. The Tiergarten, which was what it is, trees grown, but the Germans needed heat in the winter, so they were given permission to cut down the trees. So this little area here with a boy standing looking on, is more or less of a, what would you call it, a deserted area, an area that was just bombed out. And today, of course, Berlin is the most modern capital city you can imagine. If you go back, I have never been back. I lost so many men in combat that I have no desire to get back any place into Germany, so I've never been back. But other people who have been there have told me that it's a beautiful city. This is another view of the Tiergarten with a Russian statue put in here. But you can see these were all trees that had been here, cut down by the Germans for heat. This picture, in the days after the war, I was able to go travel with the general through the area. This, I went down to Rome. And the time we were in Rome, I guess the Americans used to say, were such a force that there was no place you couldn't go. So I was able to go up to the very top. And now, the very top of St. Peter's Cathedral is what this is. In other words, you can go up to a level today, at this level here, where probably you can get 30 or 40 people, and then you can go up above it, where they only allow 6 people at a time, and that's right up at the crown. And that's where this is here. I was at the area where there were only about 6 who could get up there at the time. So that's another remembrance of. This is on the ship coming home after the end of the war. And recently, I had the chance to have an article put in the Wellesley Weston magazine. And they took pictures of us and our doing where we were. And this is one of their pictures that, on my lap, is a picture of me before I went into combat. And sitting in the chair is me about 4 weeks ago. So it has a change. Now, we do run a parade in Wellesley every May, and one year, a few years ago, I was the honored person with it. So these pictures were in Wellesley recently. And this shows, of course, the Germany that we had.
That's the end, yeah.
Yes. So that's the story somewhat of my doing. But I did want to mention to you that as a person not too much older than you folks are right now, I was brought into the period called World War II. Everything changed from a civilian day like we're having today, as though you went home today and suddenly something had transpired and you were on rations. No gasoline, food limited, your own doings, and the men all being sent off to the war. So as quick as that, changing from a status much the same as you are, we suddenly became soldiers of World War II. I received my commission. I was assigned to the 78th Infantry Division. We were shipped out to England to join the invasion of Normandy. We did fight, and from the time I went ashore at the beaches of Normandy, we fought across northern France, into Belgium, through Belgium, into Germany. And the Germans at that point had what they called the West Wall. We called it the Siegfried Line. The Siegfried Line was built by the Germans during the 30s, which had all of these cement forts, if you will, little forts where they could put their guns, so that as we were attacking, the Germans were inside these forts shooting at us. We were in the outside, and we had to work our way up to get the Germans out of those forts so we could go through. When we did that, we succeeded. One of our major battles was the Hurtgen Forest. And this is after having Patton and the others going across France with almost open countryside. We suddenly got into a heavy forest where we couldn't use tanks, we couldn't use aircraft. It was strictly men with rifles. And this is where we had horrendous casualties, and it was in the Hurtgen Forest. At that time, we were just finishing the Hurtgen Forest when the Battle of the Bulge began. The German, a week before Christmas of 1944, the German brought up equipment that we didn't know they existed. They brought it up, and they attacked us. And because of the divisions to the right of us gave way, the Germans came right through and were 18 miles behind us, who had held our position on the line. And so we had to sit here for about 6 weeks. Not had to sit here, but we did sit here for 6 weeks until Patton could come up from the south. The British could come down from the north, and they drove the Germans back out of the Bulge, back to the straight line, which is pretty much the Roar River. And at that point, we were able to get on, and we started moving forward. We went across the Rhineland. We came to the Rhine River. Now, there was only one bridge in the whole Rhine River that the Germans didn't destroy beforehand. And that was the bridge right in front of us. It was a railroad bridge at Remagen. And so we were the ones coming up to it. As soon as it was seen, we decided we had to get across. So I was in the first unit, not the first man, but the first unit, to get across the bridge onto the east side of the Rhine River. And once we were across there, and the others could come over behind us, there really was nothing the Germans had to defend their way. The Russians were coming in from the east. They had already captured Berlin, and so they were coming. We got to the, what was the name of the, I forget the name of the river right now, but it was the dividing line between the Russians coming this way and us going this way. I'll think of the name as soon as I leave the meeting.
Moselle?
But,
Moselle?
no.
The Elbe?
Moselle.
Was it the Elbe?
The Elbe, right.
Oh.
There's the,
Ding, 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 you win.
the Elbe River, exactly. The Elbe River, which ran sort of parallel to the Rhine River, but halfway to Berlin. And that was where the Russians came this way, we came this way, and that's where we stopped, and that's where the war ended as far as we were concerned. And as I said, there was still a war going on in the Pacific, so we were assigned to ship out of Marseille the end of August to go to the Philippines and then to Japan. But obviously when the atomic bombs were dropped, Japan surrendered, and so in September of 1945, the war came to an end. And that really brought to an end this period of time that I refer to as World War II. Now, I've done a lot of talking here. I know that you know